How's it going? It's the Fuzz, and moving on with the giving love train, we only got 2 aspects to cover, Order and Dominion, so we're gonna jump right onto Order, and we're gonna leave Dominion for last. So these are the 9 cards I gathered together to see if we could give them a little bit of love, to give Order some more options, because they've got some really cool cards that just don't quite work out. So let's take a look. Angelic Song. So ever since this card has been nerfed, it's so no play. If you don't remember, the previous effect used to be that your opponent could not attack at all, like your face or your creatures, but it didn't draw a card. And the way it was played was in 1-turn heal, because if you didn't have spell removal, well, it just bought you another turn. That's really good for 1-turn heal. But that was really like solitaire play, where you just stall. Now, stalling would be fine if it wasn't for the instant win condition with healing, and that's kind of the problem. So while Word of Grace exists, or while the win condition exists, Angelic Song couldn't remain. So I would actually just much rather remove Word of Grace or something like that, and then like make this card back to what it was, where your opponent can't attack at all, and then you draw a card, so it's actually an interesting like defensive play. And instead, we kind of have this. The problem with this card, really, is that your opponent not being able to attack your creatures doesn't really mean much. Like, if you're playing against aggro, they're just going to go face. If you play this on 2, they're just going to develop their board. The idea is supposed to be that you protect your board, I guess, but in that case, 2 mana is simply too much of a price to pay. If you wanted to keep this effect, you'd have to make it 1 mana, and then we'd have to see if it's any good. Might be interesting, but again, I would rather that Word of Grace just gets the boot, and then this can go back to the old version with the card draw added, so Order has these defensive cards, but then they're not like relying on instantly winning through healing. That might be a bit more interesting. Maybe it still would be bad, because maybe you have enough healing with the priest shenanigans, but I would want to try it out. Heavy Infantry. So this card is absolutely terrible, and it's very simple. It's got 1 speed. 1 speed creatures in this game suck ass. And even when they have huge stat lines like, you know, Zombie Giant or Hydra, well, Hydra costs 5 mana, that's why it's terrible. It just doesn't work out because you can't attack or block. So if you're behind, it does nothing. You're going to continue to be behind. And if you're ahead, okay, it's like alright, but every creature played when you're ahead is good. So this is a vanilla card, and as far as vanilla cards go, I'm okay with them if they have like big stats. That's supposed to be the point. Like, a vanilla card is supposed to have the best stats for the cost. Heavy Infantry does not have the best stats for the cost. Not even close. So I would like to see this maybe as a more defensive card. Maybe you could have some kind of an effect where while it's on the board, you take 1 less damage from all attacks. Or this would be a good card to give taunt to. Like, where your opponent has to attack it with something before they can even, like, hit your face. That'd actually be a pretty cool blocker against garbage like Goblin Warriors and Lizards and all this other bullshit. It'd be pretty cool. But as it is, a 2/3 with 1 speed, you know, it kills zombie legionnaires. I guess that was the idea. And that's literally all it does. I guess if you put Cavalry Field Captain on this, it becomes pretty good. But then so does every 2-drop. Armory Supplies. This is an interesting card that, to someone coming into the game, might think, well, that's kind of cool. It goes back to your hand. Seems like a good value, right? But, unfortunately, the reason this card is bad, well, there's 2 reasons. First of all, lowering the speed of a creature is quite bad. If you put this on a Vanguard, for instance, it becomes a Zombie Giant. Zombie Giant is terrible. And Vanguard is actually, like, alright. So you'd be actually making the creature worse. Now, Armory Supplies gets better if you put it on a faster creature. If you put it on a 3-speed creature, like if you put it on a Haldiri Rider, right? It's a 4/5, right? Oh, it's a 4/4 with 2 speed, with Swift. That's kind of alright, I guess. And if you put it on a 4-speed creature, it actually becomes kind of good. Like if you put it on a Lightning Elemental, it's a 3/3 with 3 speed. But it's a bit too much mana, and I don't know. It'd be interesting to see this at 1 mana. But the other main issue, and actually this is the reason why all of these 2 mana small effect redraw cards are bad, because you just can't afford to play something like that. In the current meta, you're either facing aggro, who are so ridiculously efficient that if you aren't aggro yourself or draw really well, you just lose. Or you're playing like Dragon Combo or One Turn Heal who have instant win conditions. Or you're going up against something, I mean, with Hermelian, it's similar when they can just win via healing. Although against them, this would be a little bit more okay. But even Hermelian is becoming a little bit too aggressive with the temples. And then against Kayano, they just get giant creatures so they don't care anyways. You know, cards like these just don't work out. You can't spend 2 mana just developing a cute card like this. Especially since this effect isn't even that good, as it turns out. So, these cards will not see play until the meta is rebalanced a little bit. And even if it is, they might not see play anyways. But now you know why it's bad. But it's not that bad in Limited, for instance. Steel nor Bear Rider. What a little badass. I mean, dude's riding a bear. How could it not be a badass card? Well, with this one, if you want to make it a good card, just have the ability to cost 1 mana. Then it would actually be an interesting 3-drop. And a solid... It would actually be a really threatening 3-drop. Now, maybe it becomes too good, because if you play it on 3, and then on turn 4, you could play like a Vanguard, and use this effect, and as a 3-3 with 3 speed, it can kill like a lot of things. Maybe that's the reason it costs 2 mana. But 2 mana is a little bit too much, because you almost have to spend your whole turn doing that, and that's, even if you kill something for free, it's kind of slow. So it's a tough line with this one. At 1 mana with the ability, it would obviously be a good card. Would it be too good? I don't know. It'd be nice to give soldiers like a solid 3-drop. I mean, in addition to the recruiter. And I think if we had better board clears in the game, you could give soldiers more support without risking them becoming too powerful. Griffin Rider. This card's been on quite a journey. It started out as a 3-2 with 2 speed without ranged. Yeah. It was so horrible as to defy logic. It's gotten a lot better since, but it's still not really playable because a 4 mana 1 aspect is really expensive. It's a 4-drop, but if you think about it, if your library guards cost 1 aspect 4 mana, it'd be a lot worse. And in the same vein, Griffin Rider is also a lot worse. So I wanted to see what would happen if you made this 3 mana 2 aspect. I think the card would be solid. If it was a 2 mana 3 aspect 2 aspect 3 mana card, it would be solid. It would be like a solid 4-drop for Order. What a great idea. It would even be a good target for Kayanu. Imagine that, the Griffin Rider being a target for Kayanu. So, yeah, if you want to make it better without changing its identity, make it 2 aspect 3 mana. Would that be too good? Probably not too good, but it would just be really solid. Though, to be fair, this card isn't that bad. It's not, like, horrible. Not like heavy infantry. But I kind of feel sad where this should be like a solid card, but it's not. Just because of the bad mana cost. Oh, well. Path of Transcendence. Man. So, speaking of journeys, this card started out as kind of bad. Then it became really good. Then it became bad again. And then it became good again. And now it's bad again. So, it seems impossible to design this card so that it's, like, good but not overpowered. I don't know. I think it's actually close. But, again, in the same vein as Armory Supplies, you just can't afford to play something like this. It's a little bit too slow. If you want Path to be good, I would like to see this version at 1 mana, where you play it at 1 mana, you can put stuff under it, and then sacrifice it to, you know, draw the card, and it comes out with a Might Emblem. That would be pretty cool. Now, in that case, maybe it should be limited as to how many things you can put under it, just that people don't get really cute. Maybe you can only put like 2 things under it, or maybe even just 1 thing. But with just 1 thing, I think it just becomes like a Might Emblem redraw. Maybe reuse your enter the field effect, which might just be not enough of a card to really be interesting. So yeah, make this 1 mana. If that's overpowered, well then honestly I don't know. But I feel like we're close, where this version is no longer abusable because you can only do it once, whereas previously you could just go back and forth with the same version. Now, this card actually used to cost 1 mana. Did you know that? It used to cost 1 mana. but it had a different effect. Well, the main difference was that if it was destroyed, the creatures under it would just die. And because Unicorn could destroy spells and artifacts, it was in like every nature deck. And so Path of Transcendence was really bad. Oh, and Gnome Power Engineer also could destroy spells and artifacts. So yeah, Path just, you were super punished if you ran into one of those guys, and they were pretty common. So yeah, let's try this version at 1 mana and see what happens. It might end up being overpowered again, who knows, but let's keep trying with it, because I think it's a really awesome card. Unbreakable Spirit. Now, here's a card that's like never been played in Constructed. It's not that bad in Limited. So what's the problem with this one? It's the same thing as the other cards I mentioned. It's too slow. You play it, and then it has no immediate effect, and then you have to pay additional mana to draw. Like, if you're up against aggro, they'll just run you over. They won't care. And even against control, like, your opponent can decide how many cards you draw, so it's a very, very slow card draw engine. Way too slow, I think. So this is another card I would like to see at 1 mana. Because it might seem ridiculous, but again, you're only drawing cards if your opponent lets you draw cards. And if they're going face, well, you're drawing cards, but you do have to pay 1 mana each time. So I don't think it will be overpowered, honestly. I'd like to see it at 1 mana. Knight Escort. Speaking of sad 4-drops for Order, Mr. Knight Escort's been power creeped quite a bit with the creation of the Descendant of Divinity, which is just 1 more mana but like double the stats, and with an interesting effect. Mr. Knight Escort, even though it has a unique ability, the stats just aren't that good. It's only a 2/4, so it doesn't even kill like 3 health stuff, and 4 health is not that much better than 3. Yeah, it doesn't Knight a Fireball and stuff. It can kill aristocrats, but it's just not worth it. It's not good enough of a creature to be run. And maybe, inevitably, some of these creatures are just not going to be run because you can't have every single card at every single mana cost be good. But I think Knight Escort could have 5 health. And you could at least look at it and think, okay, well, maybe that's not a bad card. Because with 5 health, it could be a solid protector against aggro, because it can defend and attack at the same time. And it's not that easy to kill. So there you go. Let's give it 5 health and see what happens. Or make it have 3 speed on your opponent's turn. And finally, Prosperous Ruling, or the Poor Man's Grand Reunion. So just comparing it to Grand Reunion, you can see just how slow it is. Grand Reunion immediately puts a creature on the board at the end of turn, and then you're getting free creatures every turn. So it's better than drawing a card. It's better than just a Might Emblem. It's really insane. With Prosperous Ruling, like having to pay 2 mana to draw a card, that's ridiculously slow. Pay 1 mana to gain 2 life. Yeah, that's cool, I guess. But, I mean, it's not worth playing a card this big just to gain some life. So, all you really are left with is the Might Emblem. And, yeah, giving every single creature you summon a Might Emblem, that's cool. But you have to play this, and, you know, it does nothing. And then you start getting the value. Whereas with Grand Reunion, you're immediately getting value. So, Prosperous Ruling is going to need a boost if it's gonna be played. Yeah, you can play, you know, like the Pony Brigade, what's it called, Pegasus Regiment, and you know they all get buffed, and that's pretty cool, I guess. But again, you compare it to Grand Reunion, and it's just not even close. Maybe it needs a different flavor. I think the idea is interesting, where you know the more creatures you summon, the better it gets, but the effects need to be a little bit better. Maybe you could combine all 3, and then like you know. Every turn, when the first creature enters the play under your control, it gets a Might Emblem, you draw a card, and you gain 2 life. But only once per turn, obviously, right? That would make it pretty interesting. You know, you would start out with no advantage when you first play, but in every turn, you would accumulate, you know, you're getting bigger creatures with life gain and card draw. That might be really cool. And if that's too OP, just force them to pay 1 mana. But again, only once per turn. Just throwing out ideas out there to give Order a little bit of love. And while Order is not in a terrible shape, because they have the Harmelian Priest thing and the Harmelian Green thing, it's really just exactly one style of play that they have. And it's like right between aggro and control. And I feel like that's not really Order's fault. That's kind of the fault of some of the other cards we have. It's stuff like this that I'm hoping the balance patch fixes by nerfing the aggro, by curbing control a little bit. And probably Cayenne or Grand Reunion, something there needs to change. I don't know what exactly. Probably not Grand Reunion. More likely Chicken or Horizons, or both. Anyways, that's it for this one. The next video will be the last one about Dominion. And you might think, why does Dominion need any love? They have so many ridiculous cards. But actually, they have some bad ones. And you may think Dominion is overpowered. But maybe they're the one balanced faction. And everybody else is weak. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you next time.